you provide those opportunities for growth within your organization, if you show your people, yes, we value you so highly, we're putting you out there into the world as someone who everyone should value. We're saying you really know your stuff. We're going to give you opportunities to grow your reputation, to grow your expertise, to grow your network. Rather than setting yourself up to lose them, you're setting yourself up to keep them. It is honestly very good for employee retention, and that's the most contentious one of these points, because I know there are a lot of kind of old school employers who think, well, I don't want our employees having personal brands because then they'll leave us. That's kind of like saying, I don't want my girlfriend to look too good because then she'll leave me. The way to answer that concern is by valuing them, by saying, you know what? I know what I've got and we're going to treat you well here. And it will be reciprocated by the employee being more likely to stay there.
Welcome to Season 4 of the Internal Marketing Podcast, the unique podcast series that flips the marketing conversation from external to internal, exploring all the ways that companies can build a brand and drive growth by engaging and empowering its employees to become powerful advocates of the company brand. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I'm very happy to be bringing you this episode where we'll be talking about how company employees can build their personal brands online. But first, make every internal email a great experience with Workshop, the #1 internal marketing email tool. Effortlessly create, send, manage, and measure engaging email campaigns, newsletters, and announcements. Workshop is the easiest email editor ever and streamlines workflows with features like permissions and list management. Their powerful analytics provide valuable insights into engagement, open rates, and more. See why Workshop has become the go-to email tool for internal teams at hundreds of top-tier companies like Panera Bread, HarperCollins, Jim Beam, and more by visiting useworkshop.com. And of course, Workshop is the global sponsor of Season 4 of the Internal Marketing Podcast. So thank you, Workshop. I'm happy to have you on board. Now, let's jump into this conversation with my featured guest, Christine Gritmon. Christine is a personal brand strategist, and she'll be sharing about how company employees can build their very own personal brands online. Hi, Christine. Welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast. It's great to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Kerry-Ann. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be a great conversation, Christine. So I'm excited for us to dive right in. My first question is really what I like to call a level setting question, which I usually start my episodes with. And I don't like to assume that we're all on the same page. At last count, I have listeners in over 17 countries across the world. So I never like to assume that everybody knows all of the different nomenclatures that we talk about on this podcast. And personal branding, yes, it's a very popular phrase, but I'd love to level set and start out by asking you to define for us, in your own words, what's a personal brand, Christine?
Absolutely. Well, I define your personal brand as the version of you that lives in other people's heads. So, first of all, you want to make sure that there is a version of you taking up real estate in someone's brain, at least the right people. And then the other part of that is you want some control over what that image is. You know, you don't want someone to misinterpret you. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you give them the crucial information that they need about you, quickly, clearly, repeatedly.
I love that. And it's very important to recognize that too, because sometimes we have a perception of who we are or how we come across or how we land on others, and others may have a very, very different impression. So making sure that we're clear about how people perceive us, how we're seen, and how we're remembered is so very, very important. But Christine, why I thought this conversation was important as well is from the standpoint that when we talk about personal branding or building a personal brand, I find that typically people think that building a personal brand is just for entrepreneurs, freelancers, self employed people who basically have to build their own personal brands, as it were, as opposed to employees who tend to piggyback on the company brand that they work for or the company brand that they represent. And so I've found that some employees don't always recognize that there is value in them saying, hey, I got to build my own personal brand too. I can't just be relying on hiding behind, I like to call it, the company brand that they work for or represent. But would you agree with that? I mean, why should an employee build their own personal brand? What do they stand to gain?
Well, I can answer that from so many different angles. The first and most obvious one is that employer loyalty is not what it once was. I know that in my parents' generation, it was the standard that you'd find a great job with a solid company out of college, ideally, and you'd stay there for decades, your whole career, until you retired at 65 with a party and a gold watch. And that doesn't happen anymore. In fact, even for their generation, it ceased to happen. There have been some recessions, there's been change in corporate culture. And certainly nowadays, my goodness, I remember when I started my career over 20 years ago, I was worried that, short stints on a resume, I'd be seen as a job hopper or unserious. Now, of course, that's standard. I think the millennials changed a lot of that. It's now seen as being more well-rounded. And nowadays, not only can you not expect loyalty from the employer because they will cut you as soon as budget demands it, right? And we know that now. But in addition to that, don't you want employees who are consistently engaged with what they're doing? And there's two real ways to do that. There's making sure that there's ample opportunity for growth within your company. But then of course, if there isn't, if you have that kind of rigid structure, people need to go explore different opportunities. And so the most obvious advantage for the person who has the personal brand is that it enables them to create more of those opportunities, both externally and internally. That's a key factor of it as well, because if you make it clear what your value is, and if you are a known entity, so the people who have the power to give you opportunities know who you are and care who you are and understand what you bring to the table, that really enables you to have greater control of where your career goes, whether that's to another company because people outside your company know who you are and what you bring to the table, or even within your own organization. If you have made an impression, you're a little more likely to be able to get those opportunities.
I'm there with you on that one, Christine. And I love the fact that you talk about it. It gives you the opportunity to take control, to take advantage of opportunities, or certainly even attract opportunities that may come your way. You made
Yeah.
a point about companies, Christine, and I
Mhm.
know that this is another debate that's happening, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, where I feel like companies recognize that, hey, it's kind of great to have some employees with strong personal brands, especially the CEO, the C-suiters, the executives, because, it perhaps looks good on the brand to have a CEO who has a strong social media presence. But I still believe that there are some companies who are very, very nervous about employees who want to build their own personal brands. And I guess, too, that kind of nervousness filters down to the employees who may feel that, hey, I don't know if it's even okay for me to do that. Will my company agree? Will they be comfortable with the idea of me building a personal brand? Could you share with us how does the company benefit when employees build personal brands?
Well, there's really four main ways that I've identified that companies really benefit from this. Because when it comes down to it, every industry has their thought leaders. Every industry has those people who are looked to as the smart people, the experts. They're speaking on stages, they're writing in journals. People are just, following their insights on LinkedIn. There's a million different ways, even just, powerful networkers. So every industry has those people. And most organizations have really smart people within them. So here's how it benefits the organization for their internal smart people to become the industry smart people and to become known, liked, and trusted on a broader scale beyond just within the organization. So, one element of it is, of course, brand visibility. If the person is visible and they've got your company, in their title under their name while they're speaking on stages or posting on LinkedIn or blogging or whatever they're doing, if people know that that person who they're following and who they're admiring is with your organization, that's great for your brand visibility. In addition to that, it's great for brand trust. It's wonderful for your company's reputation because you get that sort of halo effect. If people hear a person speaking and they think, wow, that person really knows what they're talking about, and that person works for your organization, they think, oh, that organization really knows what it's doing. So that's two elements of it. Now let's go a little deeper. I mentioned before about the job hopping, about how a lot of times, people they want to stay engaged with their career, they want to keep growing. And if they outgrow an organization, they're going to leave it. If you provide those opportunities for growth within your organization, if you show your people, yes, we value you so highly, we're putting you out there into the world as someone who everyone should value. We're saying you really know your stuff. We're going to give you opportunities to grow your reputation, to grow your expertise, to grow your network. Rather than setting yourself up to lose them, you're setting yourself up to keep them. Because while, yes, other companies may see them and try to poach them, the more valued they feel within your organization, the more they feel your organization has invested back, the more they feel like their loyalty is returned, and the more they feel like they're given opportunities to grow within your organization, the more likely they are to stay. It is honestly very good for employee retention, and that's the most contentious one of these points because I know there are a lot of kind of old school employers who think, well, I don't want our employees having personal brands because then they'll leave us. That's kind of like saying, I don't want my girlfriend to look too good because then she'll leave me. That's a red flag, ladies. You want to make sure that, the way to answer that concern is by valuing them, by saying, you know what? I know what I've got and we're going to treat you well here. And it will be reciprocated by the employee being more likely to stay there. Let's be honest, it's a pain to go through an interview process. It's a pain to switch over your insurance and all of that. And if employees are given the opportunity to grow within a good company, we're gonna stay. So it's great for employee retention. And then the final point is it's also great for recruitment because if these are the people who new people to the industry or even not new people to the industry, if these are the people who are being followed and who are being listened to and respected, again, your brand has that halo around it of sort of reflected glory. So people think that your organization's a good place to be because you've got the right people. So it's great for recruiting the right people. Smart people want to work with other smart people. People who know what they're doing want to work with other people who know what they're doing. So if you've got those smarties at your party, if you've got the thought leaders who people know, like, trust, and respect at your organization, that means that they will also know, like, trust, and respect your organization and want to be there.
And here to that. I love the way you talk about the fact that obviously there are benefits to the company brand in terms of building awareness, but I love the fact that you spoke to how it helps with a great employer brand, which is not only
Mhm.
retaining, but attracting great talent. And who wouldn't want to work for a company that's really awesome at engaging and empowering their employees to build their own personal brands? Christine, do you have any examples of a company or companies who seem to be doing a really good job of just really allowing their employees to just show up in an awesome way personally online?
So there were three companies in particular that I identified that I knew from personal experience, from knowing people who worked there, from seeing their people out there taking the spotlight, did that well. So those companies were Agora Pulse, which is my social media management software of choice, and that's where I wound up working actually. So Agora Pulse, I knew did that really well and continues to. I know Mike Alton and Daryl Prell, two of their employees, are very much out there on stages right now. And even their CEO, Emmerich, he's out there on stages. And They recognize the power of people. And there's plenty of people who are running their own businesses on the side, and they recognize as long as you're serving the company, you know what? We're not going to limit your growth. Another organization that does this really well is HubSpot. In fact, HubSpot has brought in employees who have strong personal brands and a strong affinity for HubSpot, and they've celebrated that connection. In particular, their head of community, Christina Garnett, she's all over the place. She is an industry wide expert on community, and she was before she started at HubSpot. They recognized that when they were bringing Christina in, they were bringing her reputation, her following, and her expertise, with her, and, they are happy to put her out there as an expert, and she can speak to community in general, not just HubSpot. And then the third one that I was looking at was LinkedIn. I can name fewer names from LinkedIn, but honestly, it would be a little bit ironic if they didn't celebrate the personal brand because that's what LinkedIn is. So I appreciate that, as far as I'm aware, LinkedIn does celebrate that in their employees, and they recognize, they want to practice what they preach. So those are three companies: Agorapulse, HubSpot, and LinkedIn, that I personally identified as brands that, do this really well and understand the value of their people and the fact that no person is just a person. No person is just their job function.
All great examples, Christine. And, shout out to Christina Garnett because she's been a
Yes.
guest on this very podcast talking about HubSpot and how HubSpot has really, again, empowered their employees to be part of their awesome brand community. Because, again, when company brands think about building community, they think, well, we're just going to focus on the target customer and we're good to go,
Mhm.
forgetting that their employees have to be a crucial part of that journey. And HubSpot, I agree, is one of those brands that has really done well. And shout out to Christina, who was part of that conversation and internal marketing case story. So great examples, Christine. So I know we're going to go into the tips and what are some of the steps. I know you have some awesome tips and steps that you're going to be sharing for those employees who want to get started or want to build and grow their personal brands. But I can't help to think that there are some folks listening who probably are still a little bit apprehensive, right? And I'm speaking from personal experience. I mean, I've been a CMO with this company that I'm with. I've been there for 10 years now. And I never started to seriously focus on building my personal brand for probably only maybe the last 3 years. And initially, as a CMO, in the C suite of the company, I always used to hide behind the company brand, right? And I just never felt it was largely imposter syndrome type feelings or sentiments, but I never felt that I was good enough or had enough knowledge to share on my own as Kerry-Ann Stimson to be able to do that. And I went through a lot of coaching and mentorship and so on that helped me to get to that place. But I know that I speak to employees every day who are very scared. They see it, they think it's a great thing, but maybe they're afraid to start joining conversations on a platform like LinkedIn or Twitter. They see the benefit of having a strong personal brand, but they're a little nervous, they're apprehensive, they're struggling. What word of encouragement, before we get into the nuts and bolts of how to get it done, what word of encouragement do you have for those employees who are kind of just sitting on the sidelines and not quite feeling like they can jump in?
I feel like there's sort of four main fears at play there. So one of them is specific to employees, which is that they fear that their employer won't like it if they stand out. Their employer won't like it if they are putting themselves out there. I had one friend who has an incredible personal brand and is a great creator, and is part of how she got the job that she got. And then when they were firing her, um, one of her superiors said to her, "That's what you get for being a rock star." So he basically was, blaming her and her own success for being fired, which is,
Wow.
just so ridiculous and so short sighted. She has since gotten a great job elsewhere. But what I would say to that is to go back to the relationship metaphor of, if your boyfriend doesn't want you looking too good. Um, that's a bad relationship. That's a bad company to work for. I have to say, it shows that they're not invested in your growth. It shows that while they may have wanted you because you were this shiny object, they don't want you to continue to shine. And that's bad. You always want to put yourself in circumstances where you are allowed to grow and flourish. And you always have to believe, and this is really hard, you have to believe that there is something better out there for you if you have the courage to believe in yourself. The second one of my 4 fears there is people will worry that they look like they're bragging, but it's not bragging if you can back it up. So it's not, hey, look how great I am. It's, hey, look at what I did. But this is the really important part of this. You need to get out of your own head and into the head of people who are receiving this information and recognize that what you're doing by confirming that you know your stuff is reassuring them that they've made the right choice to work with you. You're providing reassurance. You're showing your receipts. You're saying, it's not bragging, "Oh, look how great I am." It's saying, "Hey, here's how you can feel comfortable working with me. Here's how you can feel comfortable putting your trust in me. You can feel comfortable having me represent your brand because I've got receipts." Another one is the fear that you'll come across as being all about yourself. If you say, "Hey, look at me," if you have a great presence online, if you're posting regularly on LinkedIn, on Twitter, you may feel a little overexposed. First of all, you're the only one seeing everything that you post. Nobody else is
Right.
seeing everything. But
Exactly.
second of all, what you're doing is making yourself more findable for the people who need to learn from you. And that's the opposite of selfish. It's selfish to let your own fears get in the way of being found by people who could benefit from your gifts. There are people out there who need to learn from you. There are people out there who need the work that you do. And if you're so selfish about your own fears and your own worries about your own perception of your own image, I mean, that's the selfish thing. And then the fourth and final and biggest fear that holds people back is the one that you mentioned, which is imposter syndrome. We have a sense of, I looked into this. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not really an expert. I just kind of do my thing. And a couple things about that. First of all, we tend to equate skill and difficulty and value and difficulty when in actuality, stuff that we're really good at often doesn't feel hard for us. It doesn't mean it's not valuable. It doesn't mean we're not skilled. In fact, usually means we are skilled. So we look at that, we look at our skills and our gifts and we say, "Oh, but that's easy though." And we dismiss it, but it's not easy for other people. So we need to recognize that first and foremost, the fact that we do have gifts and the fact that we don't think much of them because they come easily to us doesn't mean that they are without value. We need to, again, get out of our own heads, look into the heads of people who need our gifts.
That's right. That's right. Christine, you're preaching today. You're preaching
I
because
am taking us to church, my friend.
yes, girl. I love it because let me tell you, I mean, the point you made about the fact that if you're not sharing your gifts, you can almost see it as you're being selfish. And I know that was
Mhm.
my journey as well. And what certainly helped me to overcome that was recognizing that all you really need to be is just one step or one day ahead of someone else to turn
Mhm.
around and share something that can add value to their life through your own content, building your personal brand. So,
You need
we're
one thing they don't have that they need, just
just
one.
one, just one. A mentor of mine said to me, you know what, Carrie-Ann, you have to remember that where you were yesterday, someone else is there today. So all you need to do is turn around and help them and show them what you learned yesterday because that's where they are today. It's as simple as that. You don't need to be a week ahead or 5 or 10 years ahead. You just need to be one day, one step ahead. Someone else is right there. You can just turn around and say, "Hey, look out for that. Here's, make a left." It's that simple. It's not that complicated at all, and it's really, really wonderful. So, Christine, so let's get into it now a little bit deeper. And so I know again that you are the best person to kind of know take us into our final segment, which is for those employees who are now they're bought in. They're like, yes, I want to start building my personal brand. What
Yes,
are
you
some of the
do.
Oh, yes, they do. So, what are some of the steps that they should take to kind of get started, Christine?
Step one is figure out what lights you up. And that sounds so trite, but honestly, look back into your own personal history. You can go back to childhood if you need to. I mean, this works if you're 20 or if you're 60. Look back at some of the times when you felt really aligned and when you felt like, "Oh, this is really fun," or, "Oh, this is exciting," or, "Oh, I'm really geeking out on this," or even, "Oh, I'm really good at this." Look at some of the common factors that are non-task based, because if you figure out what elements of those different tasks lit you up inside, you'll find that even seemingly totally disparate circumstances are actually linked by some common factor. So look at what lights you up. Look at those common factors because that needs to be the core of your brand. Because what you want to do is build a personal brand that is not dependent upon a specific job, a specific position, a specific task. But ideally, figure out what lights you up inside and make sure that that's really the core of everything, because then you have a personal brand that you can apply to different things, as I have, and it'll evolve with you, and no one will feel like you've changed or that it's ringing false because it's not ringing false and you haven't changed. The core is the same. Then
Alrighty.
you also want to get specific as well. So the core needs to be what the core is, but you don't want to leave people guessing as to, okay, well, how is that relevant to me? You want to make it as clear and as crystallized and as specific as possible. Who should know who you are and why they should care? And that's really key. And a lot of people are afraid of niching that down. A lot of people want to be all things to all people. Well, that's the surest way to be no things to any people. So don't be afraid to say, here's who I'm for, here's what I do for them. That can always evolve. You can evolve that messaging. Just you don't want to make people do too much mental work when they come across you to figure out if they should file you in their brains or not. Um, it's really about not making people do too much mental work. It's the same with like a website. You don't want people to have to scroll for a million years to find out on your website what you do and how they can hire you to do it. You know, you want to make sure that it's clear. It's about getting out of your own head, figuring out what is going to resonate with the right people and in what ways will that resonate with the right people? What represents you accurately? Then another thing I would say, whatever platform you're on, if it's LinkedIn, if it's Twitter, if it's, the comments on a blog, if it's an in-person networking event where you're standing in front of people with your one free cocktail and a lot of business cards, wherever you are, talk to people. I mean, it's as simple as
Yeah.
that. Talk to people
Great
because even
connections.
even if they turn out not to be the right person, whatever that means, again, as I said before regarding personal brands, each person is more than just a person. Each person is a whole amalgamation of experiences, of connections, of all these different traits. And yeah, maybe the person you walk up to, and exchange business cards with, maybe you're not their client, they're not your client, they can't hire you, you can't hire them. Maybe you're not looking for a job again, you're happily employed. So you're like, why am I even here? They may know someone. They may know someone who you get to bring in as a referral to your company. They may know someone who's looking for someone who does what you do to speak at an event or to guest write for them. They may know somebody who can help you bring in a big client to your business if that's something that is part of your function. You really never know. Connection, and it can be a very, very slow burn. You never know when things will collide in just the right way, and it can take eons. But you're not opening yourself up to that if you don't have those conversations, if you don't open those connections, if you don't nurture some of those connections. So have conversations, but also make sure having conversations is a great way to be found. And then make sure your digital footprint is accurate because once they've found you, they'll look you up, hopefully. So make sure that what they find is accurate to what you said when they met you.
Love it, Christine. I love the fact that you mentioned creating connections, because at
Yeah,
the end of the day, building a personal brand is not just about shining a spotlight on you and what you do. And yes, that's a part of it, but it's also about bringing in people and creating those
absolutely.
connections, building relationships, building community around your own brand, a
Yeah.
community that you serve and support, and they support you right back. I think that's what it is. So, Christine, so you would have shared with us for those folks who are still on the outside of the swimming pool and are want to dip their toes in, but there's some folks who are kind of in the game already. They've started to put themselves out there. They have a nice optimized LinkedIn profile with all the right stuff, but maybe they want to take it to the next level. Do you have any advice for those folks as well as to how they can level up their personal brand from where they've started?
Well, these are not the right vehicles for everyone, but I know that a few really powerful vehicles for getting your personal brand out there in a bigger way. One of them is, of course, speaking. There are industry events, there are, more general events. Industry specific events are the best because a lot of them care a lot more about knowledge than showmanship. So that can be a good place to warm up before going for the bigger stages. So speaking at events both in person and virtual, that's great, but a lot of times you won't get that until you've demonstrated knowledge elsewhere through content. That can be social media content. You can post on LinkedIn and start discussions with relevant people. You can do articles there. You can start your own blog on your own website. So, basically putting out those breadcrumbs out there into the universe that you know what you're talking about so that when you do want to take a stage somewhere, there's proof that you know what you're talking about and there's a reputation there to support that. Another thing is content itself. Content can be the end unto itself. Maybe you have a newsletter, maybe you have a YouTube series. There's a lot of different
A
ways to put content
podcast.
out there or a podcast. Exactly. There's never been a better time in history to get your message out there to a broader audience without any gatekeepers whatsoever. So get your message out there and try to get it in front of the right people, and it could catch on, and that can build your relationship if you're ready to play a bigger game. You could write a book. I will say, don't write a book because you think it'll make you money. It probably won't. But what it will do if you're writing it on a business topic is it will show some degree of professional expertise, especially if people actually read it and it's actually good. A lot of people say at this point, you write a book to get on bigger stages. You know what? Fine. So it's a big undertaking. I actually am finally starting my own book that's been inside of me for
Woohoo!
years
Love
this year
it.
on personal branding. Shocking, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. And it won't be nonsense. It won't be just to get me on stages. It'll be really good. I hope that actually some business schools pick it up. I think that would be really cool.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
yeah, but that's another way to do it. So whether it's the written word, whether it's on video, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's just smart conversations in person or whether it's on a stage, you know, put yourself in that spotlight. Nobody is holding it back from you. You just need to turn that spotlight on yourself, stand in it, and have something to say.
Love it. And, Christine, I think the great way to summarize that point about how to take your personal brand to the next level is really offering value added content. It's adding
Yeah.
value to your community. So it's not just about showing up and engaging and having great conversations, but it's providing value to your community in a way that empowers them, gives them information, causes them to be better versions of themselves. Whatever it is that your community needs, providing content that feeds into that is awesome. Christine,
Yeah,
you would
have
have
have applicable intelligence, not just charm.
oh, I love that. I'm gonna make a note of that. Have applicable intelligence, not
Not
just charm.
just charm.
I
So
love
charm
it.
is great. I mean, charm will open doors,
Oh,
but you won't get to
absolutely.
walk through very many of them unless you can walk the talk.
Exactly. You got to have the substance to back it up, right? So, Christine, you would have shared so many wonderful things in this conversation, and we've reached the part of the episode where I call it the final nugget, right? But, of everything you would have shared, Christine, what, in your view, would be the number one takeaway that you'd want our listeners to come away with today, having heard everything you would have shared?
The only one holding you back is you. The only one who thinks you're not enough is you. The only one who really has control over your opportunities is you. Get out there, play a bigger game. It doesn't mean you'll never get rejected, but the fact is you can't get accepted if you don't try a whole bunch of times. I know that there are people who keep their rejections, whether they're authors or whether they're, it's business rejections or whatever. I know people who keep those because it's proof that they're trying. And if you're not getting no's, you're not trying for enough yeses. So the only one holding you back from the opportunities, from that spotlight, from that respect, from that freedom, it's you. If you're not getting a lot of no's, you're not trying hard enough. So try and put yourself where you need to be because you're the one who holds the keys to that.
The only person who's holding you back is you. I love that,
Yep.
Christine. We just need to just get out there and do it. Just
Just
get
do
out
it.
there, find out what's holding us back, deal with those fears, and jump right in. Christine, you have been so kind, so generous, so gracious with everything you would have shared. And so I must ask, how can we, the internal marketing tribe, support you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm really easy to find. I'm Christine Gritmon. I'm the only Christine Gritmon out there. Gritmon is Grit, like when something is gritty, like sand, and Mon, like Monday. And so I'm C Gritman on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Christine Gritman, of course, on LinkedIn. I'm Gritman.com is my website. Christine Gritman Inc. on, let's see, Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. And I have a podcast. I have a podcast on the Adweek Podcast Network called Let's Talk About Brand, where every Monday I come out with another interview with a guest expert on a specific element of branding. So Let's Talk About Brand is available on every podcast player. And it's a great listen, if I do say so myself.
It certainly is. Yes, folks, please go and follow Christine. She's backing up everything she's shared today. Not only is her personal brand out there, but she adds value by providing awesome content in so many ways, including the podcast. And yes, folks, go find Christine, go give her a follow and connect with her. Christine, thank you so much again for joining me for this conversation. It's been wonderful. I know so many of our listeners have benefited and I wish you all the very best in everything that you do.
Thank you, Carrie-Ann. Keep on shining.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast. I hope you got some great takeaways from this conversation. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Internal Marketing Podcast, then please join the tribe. And don't forget to leave a review and share this podcast with anyone whom you believe will find it valuable as well. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I look forward to your joining me next time.